at this stage of the game for me, and I don't want to say I'm black pilled, I'm definitely red pilled, but I decline to allow myself to be black pilled. But we're circle back to this notion of reducing the vaccine um, schedule and reducing that antigenic load that these 6-month-old and 1 year olds get that we never got. And I suppose if we really want to be skeptics, we can say, well, we can't, that's not the fact that our whole generation, that is, never got nearly that many shots. And I think it's pretty much, there's other factors in play, but it's pretty much accepted that our generation was in many ways healthier in their young adulthood and so on than people are now. And it wasn't because we had other wonders of modern technology, because we lived 40 or 50 years ago. So I think that in the big picture, one really has to ask yourself, and we'll start with vaccines, is how much of this technological advance is beneficial to human health? And the answer is it doesn't have a very good track record. It doesn't. If you have a population when you can say, well, there's other confounders, and certainly there are, but if you can say that people 40 years ago as a group were healthier than people now, if you can really say that, then we have an absolutely horrific problem on our hands. And I think that that's nothing that anyone who listens to Bobby Kennedy and takes him seriously would argue with. That's maybe a pretty good encapsulation of his whole message. And whether or not we want to assign blame to the Centers for Disease Control or the FDA or to the companies that take their stuff to the FDA and set up a revolving door for FDA officials so they can go work at these companies, a Scott Gottlieb or somebody like that, who can go from being the FDA commissioner to talking on CNBC in favor of Pfizer for $2 million a year, which he does. And of course, CNBC never mentions in the chyron that he's on the board of directors of Pfizer. Again, that's so disgustingly corrupt, Randy, that should make everyone look at Pfizer and say, they're not good people. That's so fundamentally dishonest. That's so corruptly dishonest. Other people can believe what they want. I don't believe a word they say. If they can prove to me they're telling the truth, but you can't do that and be an honest corporation. That's fundamentally dishonest. I don't care whether they made Lipitor, and Lipitor's been good for some people with, that's a classic ploy for any imperialist, is you come bearing gifts and then you pillage. So anyway, I'm just saying, I don't want to get too, let me finish up my thought. I just say that as a bit of a counter to your, it's what I took as a bit of an apologetic for an organization like Pfizer. But, and again, that doesn't exonerate the United States government, because the United States government's going hand in hand with them. I think that was one of your major points, and I agree with that 100%. So I don't want to say there's plenty of blame to go around, I suppose, but I don't trust any of these organizations, and I don't think I ever will implicitly trust any of them again in my lifetime as a physician. I think that there's been too much betrayal, there's been too much systematic lying, and I'm just, anything I get from them, I'm going to look at the fine print. But I think the other thing that we have to really look at in the wake of this new development is also how violently opposed to it the response is. The response is just absolutely, here's why it's wrong. Here's why it won't work. Here's why Denmark is so different than the United States. Here's why Japan is so different than the United States. There isn't even a one sentence acknowledgement that, well, maybe we don't need all of them. It's absolute denial.
If you like this video, check out the full interview. Also, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you get notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.